There are two things that Gen Z, especially Kenyan Gen Z, may not know, and they were very important during their time. We are talking about telephone booth and Simu ya Jamii. Maybe, just maybe, the Gen Z have an idea of Simu ya Jamii, but they have no idea about telephone booth. Actually, they serve the same purpose. It is only that they were of two generations, two different generations. And the purpose of this recording is to address the two generations. It is possible that you were there during Simu ya Jamii time, but you are not there during the telephone booth time. It is also possible that you are not there during both Simu ya Jamii and telephone booth days. So I'll try, as I usually do, to visually take you through those years when we had each, both. Yani, I'll take you through the time of the telephone booth, and I'll also take you through Simu ya Jamii. During the 70s is when I became conscious of phones. It was actually 1969 in our house in Kajiado when the houseboy, according to me, beat me for no apparent reason. He beat me up for no apparent reason, and there was a telephone in our lounge. So I took the phone, dialed. There was something on the side you dial. Then when I dialed, the person at the other end, usually it used to, over 90% it used to be ladies. Now, I just heard the word hello. I didn't even know whether it was a lady or a gentleman. But actually, if I would have known it was a lady's voice, I would have stopped there. That was 1969 when I was in standard 2. But I used to think, because my mother could talk to my father, my mother would take that phone and I would hear them talking in vernacular. So I used to think as a standard 2 that if you take that phone and ring, it goes to my father's office. Because my mother would ring and they would talk for long in vernacular. So I used to think that you pick the phone, you ring, it goes to my father's office. So I picked it, and when I just heard hello, I talked in vernacular while crying. And I said, and I can't remember the name of the houseboy. I said he has beaten me for no apparent reason. And before anything, I hung up. What I did not know is that I had talked to an operator, and the operator was confused and just ignored that. Those are telephones which used to be called operator assisted phone. Operator assisted phone. These are either dialing, you just dial straight to the person you want. But this operator assisted phone, as I said, you dial that thing on the side of the phone. Then the operator receives the phone, and you tell the operator that I want to talk to telephone number 25 Kajiado. Then the operator would connect you to number 25. And once both of you have completed the talking, you would call back to alert the operator to disconnect. Because at any given time, a town needed, let's say, 40 or 50 phone calls. Now, if you did not call back, the operator would write on the ledger that you have talked for 4 hours. And then again, for those 4 hours, it will be that other people who want to call will have less lines. That is what used to be called operator assisted phone. Then there came this dialing, which had something round, so you tilt and then it goes back. Both the operator assisted phone and the direct dialing had something that used to be called telephone booth. Had something that used to be called telephone booth. And telephone booth was a small cubicle. Mostly it was red. Mostly it was red. It is the color that came from Britain that way. We even had cartoons of Kinasiju Superman, where he would walk around just like anybody else. But if the emergency came and he wanted to dress up as a Superman, Spider-Man, whatever, he would enter he would enter a telephone booth where and then cover himself, nobody sees him, and then he comes out as a Superman, corrects the crime, and then he comes back to the telephone booth. Why the cartoons chose a telephone booth, I don't know. But then that is a technology that was imported into Kenya, among other African countries. Those were the telephone booth. Each town we had a telephone booth, several, depending on the size of the telephone booth. And usually the telephone booths used to be placed at or near post offices. We also had, during my time, I've just remembered, during my time, external telephone was different from internal telephone. Now, when I talk of internal telephone, I'm talking of East Africa. It used to be called East African Post and Telecommunication. If you wanted to ring Uganda, you wanted to ring Tanzania from Kenya, or if you wanted to ring Kenya and Uganda from Tanzania, or if you wanted to ring Tanzania and Kenya from Uganda, that one used to be operated by East African Post and Telecommunication, which handled both postal services and telephone services. But when it came to external, if you wanted to make calls in Britain, America, anywhere, we used to have external telecommunication. Their offices, the post office and telecommunication, East African Post and Telecommunication, which later became Kenya Post and Telecommunication, had their head offices at GPO. And telecommunication had their offices next to Cooperative House, touching on the American Embassy, somewhere there. That is where for those who are old enough will remember, we even also used to have telephone booths there for external. But the telephone booths for external used to be light blue. It used to be light blue. Is it called navy blue? Yeah. But then the internal, which is East African booths, were red. And when you called with a booth, there is a slot where you used to place their coins. You used to place their coins such that the coins would go in. There was something which was written ABC. I think it's A and B. I am not very sure. I can't really recall about C. Now, when you ring somebody's phone from a telephone booth, the person picks the phone and says hello. When the person says hello, you press A. You press A, then you hear the machine eating your coin. If you have so many coins, it will eat your first coin. And then when it eats your first coin, it will eat your first coin. And then you start talking. If you don't press A, that person will wonder, because he or she will say, hello, hello, and he or she will not hear you talking. But for you to start talking to that person, you have to answer that person. I mean, you have to press A. And when you press A, suddenly you will hear the machine, the booth eating your first coin. Then you will talk for 3 minutes. When 3 minutes are nearing over and you still want to talk, you press A again. So you'll continue that way according to the number of coins you have. But if you have called somebody and the person is not picking the phone, or when you place the coin used to enter the machine, but it used not to eat the machine. So when you hear the voice, then that is when you press A and the machine eats there. But if you call and then somebody doesn't pick up and you give up, you press B and then your coin comes out. That is how it used to be. I'll tell you of an experience I had, but I think it is so short and I'll just say it. There is a time I was ringing somebody, my cousin Cecilia Nyawera. I used to ring to find out if she's at her home. My mother followed her. I mean, my mother, she is her mother's immediate younger sister. So I would ring to know if you know, moving all the way to cooperative college and then finding the people are not there. So I used to ring to make sure that there's somebody, and we used to make it such a way that if I ring twice or thrice and she hears nobody, especially Saturday around early morning, she hears somebody ringing 3 times without answering, then she would know that I'm coming. So that if she is to go anywhere, she doesn't leave. So one day, I pressed I pressed A, but the coin was not eaten. The coin was not eaten. Instead of pressing B, okay, I may confuse you with AB, but I was supposed to press the one which was reject, but I pressed the accept button, which means that I can now talk to her. And 50 cents then was a lot of money then. After realizing that I pressed the one which is supposed to accept the call, I realized when I had already pressed. Then I started pressing the other one, reject, several times. When I pressed it several times, believe you me, a lot of coins. I picked around 50 shillings. They dropped down. I had to take off my shirt, place all the coins, go to a shop, change it. That is how it used to happen. Uh, we am also told that there are crooks who knew how to open that when it was when it was about to be full. There are crooks, but anyway, that is the telephone booth. That is the telephone booth, how it was, and it was there during the. It was there during a landline. It was there during landline. Uh, I last saw you know, there is this phone call that I said that you dial. There is this phone call that I said you dial round, and then the one which is called operator assisted phone calls. I last saw it in around 1985, in 1985 in Kapenguria. From 1986, I don't think there is any other telephone operated, no, operator assisted telephone. Those were the days when we had black and white. For you to have a telephone in your house and for you to have a black and white TV, you used to be somebody up there. Those are the days when TVs we had. Ours was called Ferguson. There are other people who used to have Bush. There was a TV called Bush. I know many of the Kenyans who were there during black and white TV. You refer to black and white TV, they remember Great Wall. Me, I'm talking of TVs around 1975. And people are talking of Great Wall, which came in 1985. 10 to 15 years after. So ahead of that. For people who had black and white TV and very tall areas. People would give directions and say, ukienda, if you are going to see somebody from that TV area, you move left or right and whatever. You'd be told first of all reach where there is a TV area. It was also uh, it was also hard for some. It was very hard to have a black and white TV, but it was even harder than having a TV for one to have a phone in his or her home. My mother's sister, Mama Nyawera, she had both a TV. Hers was Bush, and a phone in her house. It was 891,583. Yeah, 891,583 Nairobi. I'll come to that. And we had a phone in our house, which was 556059 Nairobi. Now, the phone call for Nairobi used to be 02. So if you are anywhere else and you wanted to ring my senior mother, that is what Africans call. If you wanted to call my senior mother, Mama Nyawera, you would, if you are outside, if you are calling a trunk call used to be 25 kilometers from where you are calling. So if you are 25 or more kilometers away from Nairobi, you would start by 02, then 55, 60, 59. That one would reach us. But if it was 02, 891,583, that one would reach my senior mother's home, the sister to my mother. I remember Mombasa, the code for Mombasa was 011. 011, and then you press another number. Nakuru was 057. Nakuru was 057, and so on and so forth. I said in Nairobi it was 02. 02 was later upgraded, and it was placed 020. That is why you find we still, even today, have. Now, they are not just within Nairobi. And you see people rushed to 020 because it was prestigious to give somebody an impression that you have a Nairobi line. So 020 initially used to be 02. Now you know. At Madaraka, as I said, we had both the TV and landline. The TV, it was larger. Our TV was larger than most. And if I can remember, maybe it is like 14-inch TV today. Yeah, 14-inch TV. But today, if you are 14-inch, is it 14 or 18? But it was not 20-inch. Black and white. It was so large at the back. Today, if you have 65-inch TV, it looks smaller than even Great Wall because it is thin and whatever. But Great Wall had something at the back which was very big. I want to explain why we had a phone call. We had a telephone in our houses. My father was a senior police officer, so that by virtue of his office, he had a phone in his house. A privilege that I also had when I became a senior police officer. I had a telephone as a deputy district boss. I had a telephone in my house, and that is how it was. It was so expensive that my father could not afford a phone call, and that is why we had, because of his official position. It's just like an OCPD those days, an OCPD and an OCS and so on. You had to have a phone at your office and a phone at your house. But the disadvantage of those phones is that they used to be landline, such that you would not carry them around, and there are very few. Is there any Kenyan who is over 18 without a landline, without a mobile phone? I don't think so. I even know of kids who are less than 17 less than 18, but have phones that are, but those have phones that are registered in an adult's name. But those days, phones were very, very few. So since the phones were very, very few, people used to use any phone booth to call. And when you called, you have to be very careful about timing, because you call somebody, he or she is not at home, maybe somebody else is there, your coins goes, your coin goes. And then the other disadvantage is that during those days, uh, you find that there was no way of knowing, there was no way of knowing who is calling. Somebody would call you, maybe you don't want to be called, maybe you don't want to be called by so and so, but other people you want them to call you. How do you block that person? And nowadays, you just take the number of that person, mark it, block it from your phone. But those days, somebody would come, somebody would call, maybe after one or two, maybe after 1 or 2 minutes is when you know whom you are talking to. But these days, you just see so and so is coming, so and so is calling. Either you reject the phone call or you block that person. We had cases where some people had landline. We had people who had landlines, but when they wanted to call, they would go and use what do you call a telephone booth. Because first of all, if you had a landline, it was either like my father. He had a landline in his office, and he had a landline in our house. Now, any other time he wanted to call anybody, he has to call. When he was far away from the office or far away from the landline, from the house, he would go to the booth. He would go to the booth. So that is how people, even with the landline, use. And then also some people came and discovered that calling using a booth was cheaper than landline, because landline, once you call, once somebody holds it, it is counted. But when it came to booth, for example, you just call the home and tell them, I'll be a bit late today. I, I'll be a bit late today, or I'm so much attached. I found myself in the other side of the town. I'll not come today. Just lock the door and sleep. You'll find that you'll pay less than, if it is that short message, you'll pay less than somebody who, because the landline was for rich people. There were so many hidden charges there that some people found it even better at times to use booths than landline. The statements would come, you'd be charged whatever. But a person like my father and myself later, since it was an official phone, it used to be that the government used to pay for them. Then came mobile phones in the early 90s. There came the mobile phones in the early 1990s. I remember the person I saw using a landline, no, using a mobile phone in Kakamega town. Uh, if you ask me, the person was a show off. Person was a show off because he stood along the main road and started talking on the phone, and people were looking at him because people are wondering how he can use a walkie-talkie. People are thinking it was a walkie-talkie, and instead of saying Roger, Roger like any other walkie-talkie, he was talking as though he was talking on a phone. And then later he told, and you know, Kakamega is people talk one language. So when he completed talking, he told the other person that, hey, say hi to my woman. And then he called the lady, and she was walking, cat walking to that place. And we were looking at it, is it called Miss Merished? Yeah. That was the first phone, the first mobile came. When the first mobile came, it was part of the, when the first mobile came, it was part of uh, Kenya Post and Telecommunication. It was part of the Kenya Post and Telecommunication, but it brought in, and it was very expensive. Handsets, hey, let me not talk about it. Then you had to place, is it 500,000? Now, when even today, placing a deposit of 500,000 today is a lot of money. But those days, to get one line, you had to deposit. I'm not very sure if it's 500,000, but it was a lot of money, whatever amount it was. It was a lot of money you had to place to deposit with the telecommunication company for you to be given a line. And the telecom people, to differentiate between landline and mobile phone, they started 072, a single two. You know, Safaricom started with 0722, 0722. But that time it was just 07, a single two. You placed there a lot of money. And if you, those days, I don't know whether the phones had phone books or anything or what, I don't know. But what used to happen is that most of the people used to cram, or they used to write on a piece of paper the phone number they're calling. Now, instead of you writing 35, you write 53, you realize it is a wrong number. You call and then, hey, hello, George. Somebody says no. I'm Michael. You say, oh, wrong number, you cut. Just that. It is considered you have made a 1 minute call. If you made a call, you had to look at the counter, the way it was counting. It is, if it is 61 seconds, it is counted to be 2 minutes. So it was very expensive, and it was very expensive. Okay, later on, they started counting per second. Even right now, they count per second. But those days, it used to be, you just say, hello, niko njiani nakuja. It is counted that to be a minute. That is when they started a channel where they created employment for the then youth. For the then youth, they looked for the youths who were selling scratch card. Yeah, those days, do we still have a scratch card for mobile phones? I don't know. But those days we used to have scratch cards for my mobile phones. So those youths who used to sell scratch cards, the telecom people organized for them to have some phones, which they call it Simu ya Jamii. Simu ya Jamii, in English, it is community phone. Community phone. It came out that they also created things like BOOTHS. That was in green, although Airtel also brought their pink whatever, such that you could use that phone to ring somebody, and it mirrored very much. It mirrored very much the same as the East African telecommunication days, whereby ringing from your own house, it was more expensive than ringing from a booth. So you'd find somebody with a phone, mobile phone, used to use that phone only receiving phone calls. You'd even see somebody with a registered line, but when he or she wants to call you or call anybody, he or she would go to a Simu ya Jamii. So Simu ya Jamii and telephone booth did generally the same job. They did generally the same job. Although I can say that telephone booth was more convenient, more private. But Simu ya Jamii, you could be there, you talk your private things, the Simu ya Jamii youth is there listening. Somebody behind you is also listening. So that is how Simu ya Jamii came, and it did a lot of job. But later on, when phone became 2G, 3G, calling and WhatsApp and whatever became cheaper than that, then Simu ya Jamii died a natural death. Have you noticed that you go to Kenya, you will not find Vodacom Kenya Limited. But if you go to neighboring countries, name them, Tanzania, Uganda, Burundi, Rwanda, even DRC, there is Vodacom Limited. But in Kenya, instead of Vodacom, we have Safaricom. You know why it is so called? It is so called because somebody, in Kenya, we have very many clever people. Very few clever people. I'm one of them, but the disadvantage I've had is that I've never been placed in a strategic place. Now, one of these clever people who was more cleverer than me, who was placed in a strategic place, you see, he was working for Kenya Post and Telecommunication. By then, it had been split. Posta became different, Telcom became different. And Telcom had placed it such a way that for you to have a mobile phone, you had to have 072, a single two, not a double two, a single two. Now somebody had 07, that is the time when we had a single two. Within the boardrooms of the telecom people, there were they were talking about approaching Vodacom. They were planning to approach Vodacom to come and buy out its mobile line, to buy out the mobile number 072 and call it Vodacom Kenya Limited. So somebody with the connection, if you ask me, I think this was an informer, because some information you sell to somebody, you buy a very high price. Somebody told another person that Kenya government wants to approach Vodacom company for them to buy the mobile site so that Telecom Kenya remains with the landline. Then the person who got that information went to the registrar of companies and registered a company called Vodacom Kenya Limited. He registered the company as Vodacom Kenya Limited and just kept quiet. This trick is there, even politically, because there's a time when during the 2005 referendum, orange and banana, this Balala, there is a politician from Mombasa called Balala. Balala said in Kakamega, and again, Balala went to Kakamega High School. So Balala in Kakamega said that from here, we are going to defeat the 2005 constitution. After defeating that, we are going to start a political party called Orange Democratic Movement. And we are going to be the government in 2007. Somebody was listening to that speech. By that evening, somebody had already registered a political party called Orange Democratic Movement. So after the elections were over, this fellow went, and these people, with the happiness that Orange had defeated the 2005 referendum, people rushed to go to the register of political parties to register Orange Democratic Movement. They found somebody had already registered that. The person is Imanyara. I think it's called Imanyara. So when they went to see Imanyara, they said, can you buy that? So they went and bought, they went and started another one, which they called Orange Democratic Party Kenya, ODM Kenya. This is the one which later became Wiper Democratic Party. Today it's called Wiper Democratic Party. But then again, when they had differences between Kalonzo and Raila, somehow this lawyer, I think Imanyara, now gave Raila the ODM party. But what I'm trying to say is it is quite similar to what happened when it is quite similar to what happened when Vodacom came to register a company called Vodacom Kenya Limited and found somebody had already registered, and he gave very unrealistic terms. Then Vodacom sat down and said, okay, stay with that name. Then they looked for another name and decided that since Kenya is a country of safari and the name com is communication, so Vodacom, they just removed Voda and replaced their Safari. And that is why you find in Safaricom there is that Kasakila thing that is there in Vodacom. That is what they introduced from there. And that is how you find that as it was called Safaricom. Sometimes later, a second mobile phone company came up. Certain telephone company came up, which today it is called Airtel. But when it was registered, first of all, it was called Kensel, which means Kenya Cellular Phones, Kenya Cellular Phone or Kenya Cell Phone. Later on, change of shareholders and directors and whatever, it changed for the second time from the word Kensel, it became Celtel. It became Celtel for some time, and again, because of change of whatever, blah, 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 it changed to the third name to be Zain. Changed to be Zain for the third time, and lastly, it changed to Airtel. That, viewers, is the history of a mobile phone in Kenya, plus with special emphasis, I said with special emphasis on telephone booths and Simu ya Jamii, which was meant to place those people at the bottom rung of our financial position, to be also be in a position where they can also be mobile. It also reached a place, I'd forgotten, but let me finish off by saying so. It reached a place where the mobile phone companies became so friendly and so accommodative that they allowed people to buy the SIM cards at a throwaway price. People started buying SIM cards at a throwaway price, very cheap, and even maintaining it was very cheap. Where the problem now laid in handsets. Handsets were very, very expensive. So everybody had a phone call, everybody had a SIM card, but very few people had a mobile cell phones. What people happen to do, that is when now there is this small Bible that is called Gideon. Yeah, there is this small Bible is called Gideon. Now you'd find everybody had a Gideon. Everybody had a Gideon Bible. Not because everybody had become religious, no. It is because everybody had now had a line, but without a phone. So people used to place there the SIM card inside there. You'd even find somebody with two SIM cards. There was one SIM card for Kensel and one SIM card for Safaricom. And they were all placed in the Bible, in the Gideon's Bible, and placed in the pocket. So when you found somebody with a phone and he was not using, say, can I please use your phone? Can I use your phone with my SIM card? The person would remove his SIM card and you'd place there your phone and ring whoever you wanted to ring, whether it is one line or two lines. And then from there, you'd remove your SIM card and return the phone to the person. It used to happen that. But by today's standard, I would recommend you don't allow anybody to use your SIM card because of legal charges. He may be a criminal and you'll have to be answered. Thank you.